Maya had never seen a sunrise, never watched leaves change color in autumn, never looked into her mother's eyes. She was born blind, and for 16 years, she had navigated the world through sound, touch, and an extraordinary sense of hearing that most people couldn't even imagine. But if you asked Maya what she missed most about not having sight, she'd tell you honestly, nothing. Because how can you miss something you never had? Her world was complete in its own way, filled with textures and temperatures, with voices and footsteps, and most importantly, with music. Music was Maya's language. It was how she understood emotions too complex for words. When she was sad, music held her. When she was happy, it danced with her. And when she sat at the piano, her fingers moving across the keys, she wasn't disabled or limited. She was free. The old upright piano in their living room had been her companion since she was 6 years old. Her father bought it from a neighbor who was moving away. And from the moment Maya touched those ivory keys, something magical happened. While other kids her age were learning to read books, Maya was learning to read music not with her eyes, but with her ears and her heart. She would listen to recordings for hours, playing the same piece over and over until she could hear every note, every pause, every breath between the phrases. Then she'd sit at the piano and recreate what she heard, her fingers searching for the right keys, making mistakes, starting again until slowly, beautifully, the music began to flow. Her music teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, was the first person outside her family who truly believed in her talent. Mrs. Rodriguez had been teaching piano for 30 years, and she told Maya's parents something they'd never forget. Your daughter doesn't just play music, she becomes it. I've never seen anything like it. It was Mrs. Rodriguez who came rushing into their house one Thursday evening, barely able to contain her excitement. Maya was practicing in the living room when she heard the front door open and her teacher's familiar footsteps, quicker than usual. Maya, you won't believe what I just heard, Mrs. Rodriguez said, slightly out of breath. Victor Ashford is coming to Hartford. He's holding a master class at the conservatory next month. Maya's fingers stopped moving on the keys. Victor Ashford. Even she knew that name. He was one of the most famous pianists in the world, known for his brilliant performances and his equally brilliant students. People traveled from different countries just to study with him for a few days. He's accepting 20 students, Mrs. Rodriguez continued. You have to audition, Maya, you have to try. Maya's mother, who had been cooking dinner in the kitchen, walked into the living room. Her voice was careful, protective. I don't know. These things are very competitive. Maybe it's too much pressure. But Mrs. Rodriguez wasn't backing down. Listen to me. I've been teaching piano my entire adult life. Maya has something special, something rare. Victor Ashford needs to hear her play. For the next 3 weeks, Maya practiced like never before. She chose her pieces carefully, a Bach prelude, a Chopin nocturne, and the piece that felt like it was written for her soul, Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor. It was incredibly difficult, full of thundering chords and delicate passages that required absolute precision. But when Maya played it, something happened. The music didn't just come from the piano. It seemed to come from somewhere deeper, somewhere beyond technique. Her father would sit in his armchair listening, and sometimes she'd hear him sigh deeply, moved by what his daughter could create. Her younger brother would pause his video games to listen. Even the neighbors once knocked on the door to ask who the professional pianist was. The day of the audition arrived on a cold Saturday morning. Maya woke up with butterflies in her stomach. She barely touched her breakfast, just sipped some tea while her mother fussed over her clothes, making sure everything was perfect. The drive to Hartford Conservatory took 40 minutes. Maya sat in the back seat, her fingers unconsciously moving through the pieces she'd prepared, practicing on her lap. Her mother kept asking if she was okay, if she needed anything, if she was nervous. I'm fine, Mom, Maya said, though her voice was a little shaky. I just want to play. When they arrived at the conservatory, Maya could feel the weight of the building even before she stepped inside. The air felt different here, heavy with history and the echoes of thousands of musicians who had walked these halls. Her mother guided her through the entrance, and immediately Maya was overwhelmed by the sounds. Voices everywhere, dozens of them. Young people talking, laughing nervously, warming up on their instruments. She could hear scales being practiced somewhere down a hallway, could hear the rustle of sheet music, the squeak of shoes on polished floors. There are so many people, her mother whispered, and Maya could hear the worry in her voice. They found their way to the main auditorium where the auditions were being held. A woman with a clipboard checked Maya's name off a list and told them to wait. They sat in the hallway outside, and Maya counted the students as they went in one by one. Each audition lasted about 10 or 15 minutes, and then another nervous pianist would emerge. Looking either relieved or disappointed, Maya listened to snippets of their playing through the heavy auditorium doors. They were good. Really good. Some of them were brilliant. Her confidence started to waver. These were students from prestigious music schools, kids who'd had professional training since they were tiny. And here she was, a self-taught blind girl from a small town thinking she could compete. Maybe we should go home, Maya whispered to her mother. Her mother took her hand and squeezed it tight. We didn't drive all this way to turn back now. You belong here just as much as anyone else. Finally, after what felt like hours, Maya heard her name called. Her legs felt weak as she stood up. Her mother guided her to the auditorium door and they walked inside together. The room was enormous. Maya could tell from the way sounds echoed from the space around her. There were people sitting in rows of seats, other students waiting their turn, watching, judging, and somewhere up front, she knew, was Victor Ashford himself. They walked down the aisle, Maya's hand on her mother's arm, her cane tapping softly. She heard whispers. Of course she did. She always heard the whispers when people first saw her. Next, the man's voice called out. It was deep, slightly impatient. Victor Ashford. Maya's mother helped her to the front and quietly introduced her. This is Maya. She's here to audition. Yes, I can see that, Victor said, and Maya could hear him shuffling papers. What pieces have you prepared? Maya told him. Her voice was smaller than she wanted it to be. And where do you study? He asked. I study with Mrs. Rodriguez at home. I'm mostly self-taught. There was a pause. Then Victor asked the question she'd been dreading. Can you read music? No, sir. I'm blind. I learn by ear. Another pause, longer this time. Maya heard him shift in his seat. Heard him whisper something to someone next to him. Then his voice came again, and this time it was final, dismissive. Young lady, classical piano requires reading complex musical scores. It requires understanding visual dynamics and being able to interpret what composers have written on the page. I'm afraid this master class isn't suitable for someone with your limitations. These sessions are for serious students only. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. The room went silent. She felt her mother's hand tighten on her shoulder. Somewhere behind her, she heard uncomfortable whispers rippling through the other students. I'm very serious about music, Maya said quietly, but Victor had already moved on, calling for the next student. Her mother began to gently guide her back up the aisle. Maya's face burned with shame. Her eyes, which couldn't see, filled with tears anyway. Every step toward the door felt like a mile. This was it. Her dream, dismissed in less than 2 minutes by a man who never even let her touch the piano. They were almost at the auditorium door when something inside Maya changed. The humiliation began to transform into something else. Something stronger. Anger, maybe. Or determination. Or maybe just the simple, powerful realization that she had nothing left to lose. She stopped walking. Maya stopped walking. Her mother felt it immediately and turned to look at her daughter's face. Something had changed. The girl who moments ago had tears streaming down her cheeks now stood perfectly still. Her jaw set in a way her mother had never seen before. Maya, sweetheart, let's just go home, her mother whispered, trying to guide her forward. But Maya gently pulled her arm free. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears, but her voice when she spoke was steady and clear. Mr. Ashford. The murmur of voices in the auditorium stopped. Maya heard the squeak of a chair as Victor turned around. She couldn't see the irritation on his face, but she could hear it in his voice when he responded. Yes? What is it? Maya took a breath. Every instinct told her to run, to leave this place and never come back. But something stronger kept her feet planted on that auditorium floor. Maybe it was all those years of people underestimating her. Maybe it was the memory of every hour she'd spent at that old piano, pouring her heart into music that no one thought she had the right to play. Maybe it was simply knowing that if she walked out that door now, she'd regret it for the rest of her life. You didn't let me audition, she said. There was a long pause. Maya heard whispers from the students sitting in the rows. Someone coughed. Papers rustled. Miss, I've already explained the situation, Victor said, and now there was an edge of impatience in his voice. This masterclass requires skills that... You explained your assumptions, Maya interrupted, surprising even herself. Her voice was shaking now, but she pushed through. You made a decision about what I can and cannot do without hearing me play a single note. That's not fair. Her mother touched her shoulder, whether to support her or pull her back, Maya wasn't sure, but she kept talking. I came here because my teacher believed I was good enough. I practiced for weeks. I memorized 3 pieces, and you won't even give me 5 minutes to show you what I can do. You're judging me for something I can't control instead of listening to the one thing I can. The auditorium was completely silent now. Maya could feel dozens of eyes on her, could sense the tension in the air. Part of her wanted to disappear into the floor. But another part, a braver part, stood tall and waited. She heard Victor shift in his seat again. Heard him let out a long breath. When he spoke, his voice was tight, controlled. Miss, I have 40 students waiting to audition and a very tight schedule. I don't have time for 5 minutes, Maya said. That's all I'm asking. If you think I'm wasting your time after that, I'll leave. No argument. But please just let me play. There was another long silence. Maya could hear her own breathing, could feel her mother's hand trembling slightly on her shoulder. Somewhere in the back of the auditorium, a student whispered something to another. Time seemed to stretch out, endless and terrible. Then Victor spoke and his voice was cold. Fine, you want your 5 minutes? You'll have them. But I'm telling you right now, this is a waste of everyone's time. Maya heard him gesture toward the stage, heard the scrape of his pen on paper as he made a note. The piano is directly ahead of you, about 20 paces. Choose whatever piece you'd like. You have 5 minutes. Her mother squeezed her hand one more time, then let go. Maya felt for her cane and began walking toward the stage, counting steps like she always did. 1, 2, 3. She could hear every tiny sound in that massive room. A water bottle being set down. Someone's phone buzzing on silent. The creak of old auditorium seats, 15, 16, 17. She reached the stage steps and carefully felt for the first one with her cane. Climbed up slowly, one step at a time. The stage felt huge and empty, and she knew that everyone in that room was watching her, probably feeling sorry for her, probably thinking Victor was right. 20 paces, just like he said. Her cane touched something solid. The piano, a Steinway grand from the sound of it when her cane lightly tapped the side. She ran her hand along its smooth surface, found the bench and sat down. For a moment, Maya just sat there. Her hands were shaking. Her mouth was dry. This was it. This was her one chance to prove that she belonged here. That blindness didn't mean inability. That music lived in places deeper than sight. She thought about all those hours at her old upright piano at home. All those recordings she'd listened to until she could hear every single note in her sleep. All those times she'd played through mistakes and frustration and doubt, because music was the one place where she never felt limited. Maya lifted her hands and placed them gently on the keys. The coolness of the ivory steadied her somehow. She closed her eyes, not that it mattered, and took one more deep breath. Then she began to play. She'd chosen Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor. It was a bold choice, maybe even reckless. This piece had destroyed the confidence of pianists far more experienced than her. It started with those famous 3 opening chords, dark, heavy, ominous. Like fate knocking at the door, Maya played them and the sound filled the auditorium like thunder. What happened next was hard to explain, even to herself later. It was like the rest of the world disappeared. There was no auditorium, no judges, no other students. There was only Maya and the music, speaking to each other in a language older than words. Her fingers moved across the keys with a certainty that came from somewhere beyond practice. She knew this piece like she knew her own heartbeat. Every dramatic chord, every delicate run, every moment where the music swelled with emotion so powerful it almost hurt. Without sheet music to follow, without the distraction of reading notes on a page, Maya had learned to feel the music in a different way. She understood it not as marks on paper, but as living, breathing emotion. The anger in those thundering bass notes, the sadness in the quiet middle section, the triumph in the final measures. She swayed with the music, her whole body becoming part of the performance. When the piece called for power, her arms and shoulders drove into the keys. When it needed gentleness, her touch became so light it was almost a whisper. She wasn't just playing the piano. She was telling a story, painting pictures with sound, making everyone in that room feel something they couldn't quite name. In the audience, students who had been checking their phones looked up. Some of them sat forward in their seats. A girl in the 3rd row felt tears prick her eyes and didn't know why. A boy who'd been confident about his own audition suddenly felt uncertain. Victor Ashford, who had already started looking at his notes for the next audition, slowly set down his pen. He looked up at the blind girl on stage, his expression changing from irritation to something else. Confusion, maybe, or surprise. His assistant leaned over to whisper something, but he held up his hand for silence. His eyes fixed on Maya, the music built to its powerful climax. Maya's hands moving in a blur across the keys, the Steinway singing under her fingers. Then gradually it softened. The storm passed. The final notes came, quiet and haunting, like a question that would never be answered. Maya played the last chord and lifted her hands from the keys. For a moment, there was complete silence. Not a breath, not a movement. Maya sat frozen at the piano bench, her heart racing, suddenly terrified. Had it been terrible? Had she made a fool of herself? The silence stretched on and she began to feel sick. Then someone started clapping. It was just one person at first, but then another joined in. And another. Within seconds, the entire auditorium erupted in applause. Students were on their feet. Some were clapping so hard their hands hurt. The girl in the third row was openly crying now, and she wasn't the only one. Maya sat at the piano, overwhelmed, hardly able to believe what she was hearing. Her mother, standing at the back of the auditorium, had her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. But the most important sound came from the front row. Maya heard footsteps approaching the stage. Slow, measured footsteps. They stopped at the base of the stage stairs, and then she heard Victor Ashford's voice. It was quieter now, different somehow. "Miss," he said, and for the first time since she'd entered the auditorium, he didn't sound impatient or dismissive. He sounded humbled. "Would you please stay for a moment? I think we need to talk." Maya's hands were still resting on the piano keys when she heard Victor Ashford's footsteps climbing the stage stairs. Each step seemed to echo in the now quiet auditorium. The applause had faded, and everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. She turned slightly on the piano bench, facing the direction of his voice. Her heart was still pounding from the performance, and now a new kind of nervousness crept in. What did he want to say? Was he going to tell her that despite everything, she still wasn't good enough? Victor reached the piano and stopped a few feet away from her. Maya could hear him breathing, could sense him standing there, probably looking at her. The silence stretched for what felt like forever. When he finally spoke, his voice was completely different from before. Softer, almost gentle. "What's your name?" "Your full name?" "Maya Patel, sir." "Maya," he repeated as if testing how it sounded. "How long have you been playing piano?" 10 years, sir. "Since I was 6. And you've never had formal training? No conservatory, no music academy?" "No, sir. Just my teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez. She comes to my house twice a week. Everything else I learned on my own." She heard him take a few steps closer, heard the rustle of his expensive suit. When he spoke again, his voice was right next to her. "Maya, I owe you an apology, a sincere one." He paused, and Maya could hear him struggling with his words. "What I said to you earlier was wrong. It was unfair, and it was based on prejudice rather than judgment." "I'm sorry," Maya didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to feel vindicated, victorious even, but mostly she just felt tired and overwhelmed. "What you just played," Victor continued. "I've been teaching piano for over 30 years. I've worked with students from the best music schools in the world. And what you just did up here," he paused again, "that wasn't just technically good. It was extraordinary. You didn't just play Rachmaninoff. You understood him. You felt him. That's something I spend years trying to teach students, and most of them never quite get it." Maya felt tears building up again. But this time they were different. These weren't tears of humiliation. They were tears of relief, of validation, of finally being seen for what she could do rather than what she couldn't. "I've heard that piece played hundreds of times," Victor said quietly. "But the way you played it just now, without being able to see the keys, without sheet music to guide you, relying entirely on your memory and your feeling for the music, it was one of the most moving performances I've ever witnessed." Maya heard footsteps approaching from behind. Her mother was coming up on stage, and Victor must have gestured for her to join them, because she walked right up and put her hand on Maya's shoulder. "Mrs. Patel, I assume?" Victor said. "Yes," her mother answered, her voice thick with emotion. "Your daughter is remarkably talented. I would very much like to accept her into this master class." That is, if she's still interested after how poorly I treated her. Maya's mother squeezed her shoulder. Maya could feel her trembling. Of course she's interested. This is all she's talked about for weeks. Actually, Victor said, I'd like to hear from Maya herself. Everyone waited. Maya sat at that beautiful piano, this moment feeling almost dreamlike. Just 20 minutes ago, she'd been walking out of this auditorium in tears. Now one of the greatest pianists in the world was asking to teach her. I'd like that very much, Maya said softly. Thank you. Good, Victor said, and she could hear a smile in his voice. The masterclass starts next Saturday and runs for 8 weeks every Saturday and Sunday. We meet from 10 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. It's intense, but I think you'll find it valuable. He called his assistant over and arranged all the details with Maya's mother while Maya sat at the piano, still processing everything that had just happened. Other students were coming up to her, congratulating her, asking questions. She answered as best she could, but it all felt surreal. The next Saturday arrived faster than Maya expected. She barely slept the night before, running through pieces in her mind, worrying about keeping up with the other students, wondering if she'd somehow imagined how well the audition had gone. Her father drove her this time, and they arrived at the conservatory 15 minutes early. The masterclass was held in a different building, a smaller space with better acoustics. Her father helped her find the room and they walked in together. Maya, someone called out. It was another student from the audition, a friendly girl named Lisa who played violin. Come sit with us. The 8 weeks that followed changed Maya's life in ways she couldn't have imagined. Victor Ashford was a demanding teacher, sometimes brutally honest, but he treated Maya exactly like every other student. He didn't make allowances for her blindness, and somehow, that felt like the greatest respect he could give her. But he also adapted his teaching style in creative ways. While other students could look at sheet music and see where a passage was building or falling, Victor would describe musical architecture to Maya in ways she could understand through sound and touch. He'd have her feel the piano's vibrations during certain passages. He'd use metaphors of waves and storms, of mountains and valleys, of light and shadow translated into sound. Music isn't something you see, he told the class one day, looking directly at Maya. It's something you feel. Maya has taught me that this semester. She hears things in pieces that the rest of you miss because you're too busy reading notes on a page. The other students never seemed to resent the attention Maya sometimes needed. Instead, they were curious, helpful. They'd describe things to her, guide her through the building, share their lunch with her. For the first time in her life, Maya was in a place where her blindness was just one characteristic among many, not the defining feature of who she was. But it wasn't all easy. There were moments of frustration when Victor would explain something visual, and Maya struggled to grasp it. There were times when other students could sight-read a new piece in minutes while Maya had to spend hours with a recording, memorizing every note. There were days when she went home exhausted, her fingers aching, her head spinning with new techniques and concepts. One Sunday afternoon, about halfway through the master class, Victor asked Maya to stay after the other students left. Her heart sank. Had she done something wrong? Was she falling behind? She waited nervously while the room cleared out, hearing the chatter of students fade as they left. Finally, it was just her and Victor. Maya, he said, sitting down at the piano bench beside her. I want to talk to you about something important. Here it comes, she thought. He's going to tell me this isn't working out. In 6 weeks, there's a recital at Carnegie Hall. Well, not the main stage, but Weil Recital Hall, which is part of Carnegie. It's a showcase for young emerging talent. Very prestigious. Very competitive. Maya nodded, wondering where this was going. I have the opportunity to recommend one student for a spot in this recital. Just one, and I'd like that student to be you. Maya's breath caught in her throat. Carnegie Hall. Even she knew what that meant. It was one of the most famous concert venues in the world. Musicians dreamed their entire lives of playing there. Me? She whispered. But there are other students who are more experienced, who've been training longer. There are other students with more years of formal training, Victor agreed. But there's no one in this class, maybe no one I've taught in years, who has your natural gift for interpretation. Your ability to make music come alive. That's not something I can teach, Maya. Either you have it or you don't, and you have it. Maya's mind was racing. Carnegie Hall. The thought was terrifying and thrilling at the same time. I know it's scary, Victor said gently. It's a big stage, a sophisticated audience. You'd need to prepare a full program. Probably 45 minutes of music. It would be a lot of work on top of the master class. But I believe you can do it. The question is, do you believe you can do it? Maya thought about that old upright piano in her living room where this had all started. She thought about all the people who'd told her, directly or indirectly, that there were limits to what a blind person could achieve. She thought about herself, walking out of this very building just 2 months ago, ready to give up. And then she thought about what Victor had just said. Not about what she couldn't do, about what she could. Yes, Maya said, her voice growing stronger. Yes, I want to do it, Victor patted her hand. Good, then we have a lot of work to do. This isn't going to be easy, Maya. I'm going to push you harder than I've ever pushed any student. But I promise you, when you walk onto that stage at Carnegie Hall, you'll be ready. Maya smiled. For the first time since this journey began, she wasn't afraid. She was ready to prove, not just to Victor or to the world, but to herself, exactly what she was capable of. The next 6 weeks were the hardest of Maya's life. She woke up at 5 in the morning every day to practice before school. Then after school, she'd practice for another 4 hours. On weekends, when she wasn't at the master class, she was at home with her piano, working through the pieces she'd chosen for Carnegie Hall. Her program was ambitious, maybe too ambitious. Rachmaninoff's Prelude, of course. Then Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, which required a delicate touch and deep emotional understanding. And finally, Debussy's Clair de Lune, a piece so beautiful and so technically demanding that even professional pianists approached it with respect. Victor came to her house 3 times a week now, giving her private lessons on top of the master class. He was a different teacher in these one-on-one sessions, gentler, more patient, but also more demanding. He'd make her play the same passage 50 times until it was perfect. He'd stop her in the middle of a piece and ask, "What are you feeling right now?" Not "What should you be feeling?" "What are you feeling?" At first, Maya didn't understand the question. She was feeling nervous, pressured, worried about making mistakes, but Victor shook his head. "No, that's what you're thinking. I asked what you're feeling. The emotion behind the music. If you can't feel it, the audience won't either. Close your eyes. Well, you know what I mean. Stop thinking about your fingers. Think about the story you're telling." Maya tried again. This time she let herself sink into the music instead of trying to control it. She thought about sadness, about longing, about beauty that breaks your heart. And something shifted. The notes were the same, but the music was different. It breathed. It lived. There, Victor said quietly. That's it. That's what I want to hear on that stage. But as the recital date got closer, Maya's nervousness grew. She started making mistakes she hadn't made in months. Her fingers would slip on passages she knew by heart. She'd lose her place in the middle of a piece and have to start over. 2 weeks before the performance, she had a complete breakdown during a practice session. She was working on the Chopin, and she just couldn't get one particular passage right. Her fingers kept fumbling, the timing was off, and after the 20th attempt, she slammed her hands down on the keys in frustration. "I can't do this," she said, tears streaming down her face. "It's too much. I'm not ready. I'm going to embarrass myself and embarrass you and everyone who believed in me." Her mother, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner, came over and wrapped her arms around her daughter. "Baby, you're exhausted. You've been pushing yourself too hard. But the recital is in 2 weeks. I know, but you're not going to play well if you collapse from exhaustion. Take tonight off. No practice. We'll order your favorite food, watch a movie, and you can just rest." Maya wanted to argue, but she was too tired. That night, for the first time in weeks, she didn't touch the piano. Her father ordered Chinese food, and they all sat together in the living room, just being a family. Her little brother told her about his soccer game. Her parents talked about work. Nobody mentioned the recital, nobody mentioned practice, nobody mentioned Carnegie Hall, and somehow that's exactly what Maya needed. The next morning, she woke up feeling different. Lighter somehow. She sat down at the piano and the music flowed from her fingers like it used to, natural and effortless. The passage that had frustrated her the night before suddenly made sense. Her hands knew what to do. Victor noticed the change immediately at their next lesson. "Whatever you did, keep doing it," he said with a rare smile. "You sound like yourself again." The week before the recital, Maya's entire family drove to New York City. They stayed in a small hotel near Carnegie Hall, and the night before the performance, Victor took them all to see the venue. Walking into Carnegie Hall for the first time was overwhelming. Maya could feel the history in that building the moment she stepped inside. The air felt thick with the presence of every great musician who'd ever performed there. Her footsteps echoed on the marble floors. The ceilings were so high that sounds seemed to float up and disappear. Victor led them to Weil Recital Hall, the smaller venue where Maya would perform. But small was relative. There were nearly 300 seats. Would you like to see the piano? Victor asked. Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. They walked down the aisle and then she was on stage, the same stage where legendary musicians had stood. Victor guided her to the piano, a beautiful Steinway concert grand. Go ahead, he said. Try it out. Maya sat at the bench and placed her fingers on the keys. She played a few scales, some arpeggios, getting a feel for the instrument. The sound was incredible, rich and full, filling the entire hall even though she was barely touching the keys. This is where you'll sit tomorrow night, Victor said. 300 people will be out there watching you. Critics, musicians, people who've been coming to Carnegie Hall for decades. Some of them will be skeptical. A 16-year-old blind girl playing pieces that challenge even professionals. They'll doubt you before you play a single note. Maya swallowed hard. This wasn't exactly a pep talk, but Victor wasn't finished. Let them doubt. Let them be skeptical. Because the moment you start playing, none of that will matter. All that will matter is the music. And Maya, you have something special. You have the ability to make people feel something they didn't expect to feel. That's not about technique or training or years of study. That's about soul. And you have more of that than anyone I've ever taught. Maya felt tears prick her eyes again, but these were good tears. Thank you, she whispered, for believing in me, for giving me this chance. You earned this chance, Victor said firmly. Nobody gave you anything. You fought for it, you worked for it, and tomorrow night, you're going to prove to everyone exactly what you're capable of. That night, Maya barely slept. She lay in the hotel bed listening to the sounds of New York City outside her window, going over the pieces in her mind. Every note, every pause, every dynamic change. She'd practiced so much that the music was part of her now, living in her fingers and her heart. The next morning felt surreal. Her mother helped her get ready, fussing over her dress, fixing her hair. Her father was unusually quiet, and Maya knew he was nervous too. Her brother kept trying to make jokes to ease the tension, but they all came out awkward and forced. They arrived at Carnegie Hall 2 hours before the performance. Maya needed time to warm up, to get comfortable with the space, to settle her nerves. Victor was already there and he took her backstage to a small practice room. How are you feeling? He asked. Terrified, Maya admitted. Good. If you weren't scared, it would mean this didn't matter to you. But don't let the fear control you. Use it. Channel it into the music. Maya practiced for an hour, running through difficult passages, warming up her fingers. Other performers were doing the same in nearby rooms, and she could hear snippets of violin, cello, and other piano pieces floating through the walls. Then, suddenly, it was time. A stage manager came to get her, saying they needed to start seating the audience. Maya's heart began racing. This was real. This was happening. Her mother came backstage to see her before she went on. She hugged Maya so tight it almost hurt. I'm so proud of you, baby. No matter what happens out there, I'm so proud of who you are. Her father and brother hugged her too. Her brother whispered, You're going to be amazing. Show them what you've got. Then they were gone, finding their seats in the audience, and Maya was alone with Victor backstage. She could hear the murmur of people filling the hall, the rustle of programs, the coughs and whispers that always filled a theater before a performance. Maya, Victor said, taking her hand. Remember what I told you. Forget about the audience. Forget about the critics. Forget about everything except the music. Tell your story. Make them feel what you feel. Maya nodded, her throat too tight to speak. The stage manager appeared again. Miss Patel, you're on in 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 120 seconds. Maya counted them in her head, each one feeling like an eternity. She heard the house lights dimming, heard the audience growing quiet. It's time, the stage manager said gently. Victor squeezed her hand one last time. Go show them who you are. Maya picked up her cane and walked toward the stage entrance. Her legs felt shaky, her hands were trembling, and her heart was pounding so hard she thought everyone in the building must be able to hear it. But as she stepped out onto the stage, as she heard the applause welcoming her, something inside her settled. This was her moment. Everything she'd worked for, Everything she'd overcome had led to this. She wasn't going to let fear steal it from her. She made her way to the piano, sat down at the bench, and placed her hands on the keys. The audience grew silent. The entire hall seemed to hold its breath. Maya took one deep breath, then began to play. The first notes of Rachmaninoff's prelude rang out through Carnegie Hall, and Maya felt the fear melt away. Her fingers knew what to do. They'd played these notes thousands of times in her living room, in the conservatory, in her dreams. Now they played them here on one of the most famous stages in the world. The opening chords were powerful, commanding attention. Maya felt the music move through her body, felt the piano respond to her touch. The Steinway was magnificent, every note clear and resonant, filling the hall with sound that seemed to wrap around the audience like a living thing. In the third row, her mother sat with tears already streaming down her face, her hand gripping her husband so tight her knuckles were white. Her father stared at the stage, unable to believe that the young woman up there, playing with such confidence and power, was the same little girl who used to bang randomly on their old piano keys. Maya moved through the piece, navigating its treacherous passages with the certainty that came from complete mastery. But more than that, she played with feeling. The anger in those thundering bass notes, the questioning in the quieter middle section, the resigned beauty of the final phrases. She wasn't just playing music. She was telling a story without words, painting emotions in sound. When the last notes of the Rachmaninoff faded, there was a brief moment of absolute silence. Then the applause began, sudden and enthusiastic. Maya allowed herself a small smile. One piece down, 2 more to go. She waited for the applause to die down, then began the Chopin Nocturne. This piece was entirely different from the Rachmaninoff, gentle, lyrical, like moonlight on water. Her touch became softer, more delicate. Each note floated in the air, hanging there for a moment before fading into the next. In the audience, an elderly woman who'd been coming to Carnegie Hall for 40 years leaned over to her companion and whispered, "She's extraordinary. The way she phrases, it's like she's singing through the piano." A music critic sitting in the back, who'd come fully prepared to write a skeptical review about a blind teenager performing at Carnegie Hall, put down his pen and simply listened. He'd forgotten the last time music had moved him like this. Maya played the Chopin as if she were sharing a secret with each person in the audience. The piece was intimate, personal, and her interpretation brought out every nuance of emotion that Chopin had woven into those notes. When she reached the final, soft cadence, she let the last note ring out until it faded to nothing. More applause, louder this time. Maya could hear people shifting in their seats, could feel the energy in the room changing. They'd come curious or skeptical. Now they were invested. Now they were with her. The final piece was Debussy's Clair de Lune. Maya had saved it for last because it was the piece closest to her heart. It was the first classical piece she'd ever heard, played on an old recording at her grandmother's house when she was 5 years old. Even before she understood music theory or technique, she'd understood that this piece was about beauty that made your heart ache. Her fingers touched the keys with the lightest possible pressure, and the famous opening melody floated out into the hall. It was music that sounded simple but required incredible control. Every note had to be perfectly placed, perfectly timed, perfectly weighted. Too much pressure and it became sentimental, too little and it lost its warmth. Maya played it perfectly. She swayed gently with the music, lost in it now, unaware of the audience, unaware of anything except the conversation between her heart and the piano. The piece built to its emotional climax, waves of arpeggios cascading like moonlight on water, then gradually softened again, returning to that simple, heartbreaking melody. In the audience, her mother was openly crying. Her father's eyes were wet too, though he kept trying to blink the tears away. Her brother sat between them, for once completely silent, completely still, listening to his sister create something beautiful. Victor stood at the back of the hall, his arms crossed, his face unreadable. But inside, his heart was full. This was why he taught, not for the students who came with advantages and connections, but for moments like this, for watching someone discover what they were truly capable of. Maya played the final, delicate notes of Clair de Lune, each one carefully placed like drops of light. The last note faded into silence, and for several long seconds no one moved. No one breathed. Then the entire audience rose to their feet. The applause was thunderous, overwhelming. People weren't just clapping politely. They were cheering, some of them shouting, "Brava!" Maya sat at the piano stunned, her hands still resting on the keys. She'd played well, she knew that. But this response was beyond anything she'd imagined. The applause went on and on. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3. People didn't want to stop. Finally, Maya stood up, found the edge of the piano to orient herself, and took a small bow. The applause somehow got even louder. Backstage, Maya was immediately surrounded by people. Her family got there first, her mother hugging her so tight she could barely breathe, her father kissing the top of her head over and over, her brother bouncing excitedly and saying, "That was so cool. You were amazing." Then Victor was there, gently moving the family aside for a moment. He took both of Maya's hands in his. "I've taught hundreds of students," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I've trained concert pianists who perform all over the world. But what you did out there tonight..." He paused, composing himself. "That was one of the finest performances I've ever witnessed. You didn't just play those pieces, Maya. You owned them. You made them yours." Maya was crying now, all the tension and fear and pressure of the last few weeks finally releasing. "I couldn't have done it without you. You believed in me when..." "No," Victor interrupted firmly. "I didn't give you talent. I didn't give you that connection to music. You had that all along. All I did was help you see..." He stopped, realized what he'd said, and laughed softly. "Help you understand what you were already capable of." The next few hours were a blur. People kept coming backstage to congratulate her. Musicians, critics, people from the audience who just wanted to shake her hand and tell her how much her playing had moved them. Someone from a music magazine wanted to interview her. A talent agent gave her mother a business card. But the moment that mattered most came near the end of the evening. 3 young people approached her, hesitant but hopeful. One of them spoke up, a girl who sounded about 14. "Miss Patel, I just wanted to say thank you. I'm deaf in one ear and I've always loved music, but people told me I shouldn't bother trying to pursue it seriously. But watching you tonight, you made me realize that maybe they're wrong. Maybe I can do it too." The second person was a boy with a speech impediment who dreamed of being a singer. The third was a young woman in a wheelchair who played violin, but had been told that her disability would limit her opportunities. Maya talked with them for a long time, long after most of the crowd had left. She told them about the audition, about Victor's initial dismissal, about all the times she'd wanted to give up. But more importantly, she told them about the music, about finding that thing you love so much that other people's doubts stop mattering. "Don't let anyone tell you what you can't do," she said. "Let your music speak for itself. If you're good enough, if you work hard enough, if you love it enough, you'll find your way." Later that night, back in their hotel room, Maya's mother helped her out of her concert dress and into comfortable clothes. They sat on the bed together, neither of them quite ready for the day to end. "How does it feel?" her mother asked. Maya thought about it. How did it feel to have played Carnegie Hall, to have received a standing ovation, to have proven wrong everyone who'd ever doubted her? "It feels like the beginning," she said finally. "Not the end. Like this is where things really start." Her mother smiled and kissed her forehead. "I think you're right." The next morning, Maya woke up to her phone buzzing constantly. The performance had been recorded, and somehow clips of it had made it onto social media. They were being shared thousands of times. The comments were overwhelmingly positive. People were calling her inspiring, incredible, a once-in-a-generation talent. But what struck Maya most were the messages from other people with disabilities. Musicians and artists and dancers who'd been told they couldn't pursue their dreams because of their limitations. They thanked her for showing them that another path was possible. A week later, Maya received an email that made her hands shake as she listened to it through her screen reader. It was from the admissions office of Juilliard, one of the most prestigious performing arts schools in the world. They'd heard her Carnegie Hall performance. They wanted her to audition for their program. Maya sat at her old upright piano at home, the same piano where this journey had begun, and smiled. She thought about that day at the audition, when Victor had dismissed her without hearing a single note. She thought about almost walking away, about almost giving up. But she hadn't walked away. She'd stood her ground. She'd demanded to be heard. And that decision had changed everything. She placed her fingers on the familiar keys and began to play, not because anyone was listening, not because she had anything to prove anymore, but simply because she loved it, because music was her language, her joy, her way of touching the world. And that, Maya thought, was the best reason of all. The old piano sang under her fingers, filling the house with music, filling her heart with gratitude. She was blind, yes, but she could see the only thing that really mattered. She could see who she was meant to be, and nothing, no limitation, no dismissal, no doubt could take that away from her.